Hi, and welcome back to Flutter tutorial. And today we're going to look at our Mynelayan application, and we're going to continue with user registration. So in the previous video, we are able to create, we have created our registration form, which consists of name, phone, email, and a password. And the password also implement and there's a agree checkbox that asks user to read the agreement before register. Um, and here, this is where we going to retrieve all the user data and then pass to our back end. All right, so the user registration form basically allow user to enter the data, like for example, the following data. Um, Azman bin Hamdan. Phone number, just put just a random number here. And email is at ham@abc.com. Password abc123 and also password abc123. Um, and when user click on this register button, you can see there's a show dialog window which implemented through this show dialog methods. This on register dialog check for the form key and then also for the checkbox button, and then get the password and also check for the password if they are not the same, and then display the show dialog here. Right, so the show dialog here display register new account. Are you sure you want to register? And this basically called through this show dialog methods. All right, so once user click on yes, which is register user text button here, and then this register user method, which is down here, will basically perform the next step of user registration and gather all the data from the form and pass the data to our backend, to the application backend. This section here is just to show progress dialog. Just a very simple progress dialog by using show dialog. And this is where we get or retrieve all the data through our controller that we have defined in each of the text field. The HTTP post here, so usually when we want to insert data, so we can use post array and pass the data through what we call as a body section. The URL of this application or the API to the application now handled through the myconfig class server directory, which I've created in this class. So there's a class called myconfig in the lib directory, and here just for the easiness later on to change the server IP address, the XAMPP server IP address. So I've created this class with a variable, and this variable basically contain an IP address for our XAMPP server. All right, so for that, for the registration, we need to have register user.php. So this register user.php will receive all this body data or post body array and then respond to the data. So let's see the data first. Let's see the backend script first. All right, so this is our registration, register user.php that basically handle the application HTTP request. So for the HTTP request, we started with to check if the post array is available or not. So the if is set here to check if this post array is available or not, and if it is not available, the application basically will respond with an array and then respond back as a JSON data to indicate that the response is or the response status is failed. But if there's a post array in the request, the application basically will continue with the rest of the script and then start with include once to for the database connector. And here what we have, this is basically our data that we receive from post array, name, email, phone, password. And there's a one data that we generate through random value, which is OTP. And at the bottom here, this SQL statement here, this is basically a simple insert statement, which insert data into table user with the following fields and values. So the value basically receive from our post array and then use in the SQL statement. And then once we built the SQL statement, we can use the if statement to check or execute the SQL query and check if the status of the operation is a success or not. If the status of the operation is success through the execution of this con object here and execute the SQL insert. We build a SQL array, we build a response array, and then pass back to the send JSON function. And then so that the application will be able to receive the response body. So that's basically just a very simple just a very simple implementation how the PHP backend operation works. Once we have the backend ready, so what we need now is to test the response. Okay, so when user press the yes button here, what will happen? All the data from this form here will be sent to this register user.php, and then um, the rest of the script here will take over and then build a proper response back to the application. And to do that, we need to be able to see the result or check the result first. And here what we have, so if we enable back this section here, as you can see, the HTTP request will wait for the response that came back from the server. So this is an asynchronous process, and we have to wait for the server to respond back. So let me just reload on this, and let's try what type of response basically return back from the server. So this part here, this is basically to receive the response from register user.php, and the response basically in what we call as a JSON data format. So if we mark the uh, or we put our breakpoint here, and let's see the result through debug console. So let me press the register button and press yes here, and let's see what basically the response is all about. The response can be seen through our debug console. At the bottom down here, you can see the status, success, and data is null. And this is the response that we expect for the server to return back to our application. So when the print response dot body basically returning what we call as a JSON data format, and JSON data format is basically the standard format in data transfer nowadays, or text data transfer over the internet nowadays, and it basically usually being used in any API access. So once we have our response body here, and we confirm that we receive a response body properly, actually the first thing that we need to do before we can process the data, this is because this will require further processing, is that we need to check for the status code, okay, the response status code. And usually the response status code returned by server, usually they have what we call as the server response status code. So the status code that we're looking for a success server operation is 200. Okay, there are many other server response code. For example, like 500, which is internal server error, 404, document not found. But usually we are looking for 200, which to indicate that the server is working and the document that we request here properly return data. All right, so once we confirm that status code is 200, we need to convert the data into what we call as a JSON. We need to decode the JSON data into array, data array that we can manipulate. Because our application here or Flutter, they cannot use raw JSON data as this. It will be required to convert that into array and then process the data through array as here. So this is where we process the data into array and we use what we call as JSON decode, and then to decode the response that return back the server from the server, which is body, response.body. So once we have the data converted into array, um, now we can use the data. So the data that we receive, the first section here is a status, and the second data that we receive here is data, which is at the moment we don't send any data back. We just send status of the operation back. So if the status is success, then we just display or we just put a snack bar and display back to user. If otherwise, it will display fail. And then at the bottom here, we just want to pop the navigator so that our alert dialog here will be closed. All right, so that's basically the logic here. So we need to check the response code first and then decode the response into JSON data array and then check for the JSON data array if it basically containing success or fail. If it contain or equal to success, and then we can just let user know that the registration is success or whatever that other operation that you want from here. For example, navigate to login screen. But if the status return fail, display a snack bar that the registration is failed. But if other than that, we can also print out a registration failed. So let me just continue with the operation and disable the breakpoint again and run. All right, so as you can see here, there's a snack bar there and it shows a registration success. And then we can check on our server to indicate that the process is a success. All right, so there's a table user there, and then you can see our second ID there with emails. Sorry, this one is Azham, this one is Azman. Um, yeah, Azman Hamdan. So means that you have your username, and then you have your email, password, OTP, and also user date rec. So that's basically showing that the insert operation is a total success. So a very easy operation in terms of user registration, and then um, how Flutter use HTTP and make a request to backend service, and then to the database, and then return back the data as a JSON data request. All right, so that's basically describe about user registration. Okay, next we're going to look at login screen. So for the login screen, it's basically going to follow the same idea, the same concept here. So we're going to need our login screen. So let me show you my login screen here, which is from this button. So this login screen, basically just a very simple login screen, which contain user email and also user password. And then there's a checkbox at the bottom there with login. So for the login operation, login screen, what we have here is, let me just show you the login screen, which basically consists of the following. Um, so the form basically handled through widget build, and it basically defined in the body section here, defined through single child scroll view. And here is just column. So the first section of the columns here displayed through sizeboard. So this is sizeboard here, which display an asset image, a small padding through sizeboard at the bottom, and also for this login form here handled through this padding widget, and cart and inside with columns and form. All right, so that's basically for the form. And for the checkbox here, it's basically covered, it's basically handled through this row. And this row consists of checkbox, flexible for the gesture detector for the remember me here, and also finally a material button for the login button. All right, so that's for the UI part. At the bottom down here, basically for the link and implemented through also gesture detector, allow for user to click on a text and then register new account, or for the second one, forgot account later that we're going to implement. All right, so once we have our UI ready, so we have our login button, which we'll press and then pass these two data to our backend. So when you just click on this login button here, what we have is this on login method that start to check for the form key and also retrieve the data from both controllers. So once we retrieve the data from both controller, then we can implement HTTP post, and the HTTP post will require another PHP backend script for the login operation. So this is login.php and will pass two data through its body and then wait for a response back from loginuser.php. So next, we're going to look at our loginuser.php, which is basically the following. So the same. So I always start my login user with is set. So this is just as very simple to check if there's a post array. But here, if you want to use an API key to safeguard your API, you can also do it here. All right. So then once you check on that, we retrieve the data from the email and post array, password post array, and then we perform the database connector and build our SQL. So the SQL here will select all, the statement here will select all from table user, where user email equal email and user password equal pass, that we already hash the password. So once we have our SQL, then we can just run the SQL statement and assign to a result object. Uh, for the login, we usually want to return back data. So it's not just a status of the operation, but we want also to return data so that we will be able to retrieve the rest of the data from database instead just email and password. So to be able to do that, we can just implement result, which is function numRow, to check the execution return any data or not. And it will always at least return one data or no data at all. So if it return one data, means that there's a login information in the database. If it returns zero, means that there's no search user from database, then we want to respond fail. But if there's a data from database, we want to retrieve the data from database and return the data to the application. So that's why we can see from here, the while statement here, this is basically where we traverse the database, and then we can just build our array and then use the row and then create an array for ID, for email, name, phone, and each of the array here will store value that we receive from database through this data field or field that we have from our database, right? So we assign each to its row and then to its array. So once we have our user array and the response that we want to return back, the response array that we want to return back to application will contain data. So we return status of the operation as a success, and also we return data as a user array. So this user array that we have from here is just a one-dimensional array, just one data array. And then we can just build JSON array, send to the JSON response, and the JSON response will use the JSON encoder to return back the data to the application with the user data here. All right, so let's see the data that's being written. And as we can see here, we check for the response status code 200. And then if there's a response code 200, we convert the data into JSON data array and then check the status of the operation if it is a success or not. So from here, let's check the data. So let me put a breakpoint somewhere over there or before that. All right, so we'll breakpoint and check the data returned by the server. So if I press this login button, so what you have is the following. All right, so this is basically where we receive the data. Okay, so it print out the response body that we mark here. We put it here. This is just to check what the data is being returned back from our backend script, login user.php. And then here you can see that the data is basically properly returned back as a JSON data. So if you want to check for the JSON data, you can take from there, and then you can use the JSON editor online to check for the data format, as you can see here. So you can put it here and then copy to the right and then copy back to the left just to check the data structure. So the data structure, JSON data structure here, as you can see, there are two segments. There are two objects. We have status object and then we have data object. So the data object here comes with an array of data, which consists of the user information such as ID, email, name, phone, password, OTP, and date registration. So this is basically to show that the data properly written as JSON data. However, we will require to process the data, okay? To process the data. So we know that we retrieve user data information. So usually what we did is that we create a user data object. Okay, so user class, and then we can just easily create a user data object and then retrieve, assign the data to this particular object. So what we need now is to have what we call as a user-defined class, or the class itself. So to be able to create user-defined class, I already created the class here. It's basically available under models and user.dot. So this is by far is a very standard definition of user class. So the user class here, and as for any other classes, usually will contain a list of variables, a constructor to initialize all the variables. And there are two special functions provided by the Flutter, which is called from JSON and to JSON. That is going to be very, very useful because this will automatically convert your data either from JSON or convert back the data to JSON. So these two functions quite handy to use. But here you can do it, or you can create the class manually by using the format here, or we can just use another tools called um, dot to class. Okay, call it JSON to dot class. So JSON to dot class, this basically will take your JSON data like we already have here, but we don't want to take the whole data. We just want to take user data. And the user data basically starts from this curly bracket and ended out until there. So we need that data. So once we take that data, we can just put it inside the JSON input here, put it there, and then provide with your class name. So in this case, we use user as the name of the class. So it's up to you, either you want to use private data or not. But in my case, I don't use private data. But if you want to properly define your class, you can use private data, which you will require to use getter and setter method. But in this case, I just want to use a simple method. So not going to use private field. So to generate class, you just press generate and it basically automatically given to you your class definition. So everything is there. So all you need to do, just take the class and put it into your class, create new file and put it into here. So you have your user class definition automatically created for you. All right, so once you have your user class defined, then we can go back to our login screen because we're going to use the user data object. We're basically going to use user data object and then create a user object from there. So as we can see from here, we create just a normal user object definition, and we use the from JSON function to automatically convert our JSON data that we receive from JSON data from JSON to user object. So just to confirm, just to check on the availability of the user object, let me continue running the application. So run up until here breakpoint, this breakpoint, run. All right, now as you can see, the class or the user object here, okay, we have our array and then we have another printout down here. So this printout basically print out user object and the variable that we want to show. And in this case, I want to get name variable. And there's also another one, I want to get email variable. So this is basically the first one print out here. So if I continue if I continue from here, it will basically show this snack bar, which is login success, and then pass to this replacement navigator with going to the main screen. All right, so for the main screen here, as we can see, the main screen, basically the main screen that we have in the main screen here. Uh, So, but we want to be able to use data because we already have user object. However, we need to understand that user object only available within that class. So if you move to another class, you no longer have that variable. So to have that user object or user variable, user data, you need to pass that along to another class. All right, so when we navigate to another class, which is we want to go to the main screen here, to be able to display back our main screen with all the tabs. So we need to understand the concept of passing data. Okay, so here we have material page route. We want to route to main screen class. And from the main screen class, we want to pass this special parameter, which is the user object that we have created up there. So the user object that we have created up there, we want to pass to the main screen. So the main screen, when we want to pass data to main screen, basically we are passing as a constructor. So we need to go back to the main screen, and the main screen will require final definition for the user object to be added. Okay, so when we add the final user object here, so now we have this user object definition. and the class will automatically request to add the following to the constructor. Okay, so once you have this required this user, it will automatically ask user to add this to the navigator route. So now when you move from login to the main screen, user object that we have created will also to pass to the main screen class, and now user object available in main class. However, we know that the main class use what we call as a tab navigation, and as a tab navigation is going to be a little bit different. Okay, to be a little bit different in terms of implementation because the UI now fragment into 4 tabs. So we need also to pass from one tab to the other. So the main screen now, they have user object. We also need to update all the tabs class. Okay, we have buyer tab, seller tab, profile tab, and also news tab. So each of the tab, as you can see here, also will require to be updated. So for example, the buyer tab screen here. So the buyer tab screen here require also the same user object and then required keyword. Okay, so we can see that so that we can just pass our user object. But to be able to call back each of the class object that we have up here, we need to use widget keyword or widget class name. So this widget means that this dot user, which is basically comes from this user object. Right, so to be able to call it, we need to call widget.user, so which means that we want to pass this user object to another class. The same with seller tab screen, profile, and news tab. So we go to the seller tab screen here. So the seller tab screen also contain the same user definition and also required by the class name, and then can be used in the program in the class itself. So again, to use the class, you need to define widget.user to pass the user object. But if you want to retrieve the data within the user object, you can use the for example the seller tab screen here. So if you want to use the user object, this one, we need to call widget.user.id, for example. Okay, so widget.user class dot. So whatever data that you want to retrieve, the variable that object variable that we want to retrieve, we can retrieve further by dot. Okay, so like for example, if I put dot here, you can see the rest of the data basically available: ID, name, OTP, password, phone, email, and date rank. So that's basically how we pass data from one class to the other and allow us to use those data in that particular class. All right. So they are basically agnostic. They have no idea the availability of the data from one class to the other unless we pass the data through its constructor. All right, so that's basically how it works. And let me just continue the rest, running the application. So you can see here, it basically goes to the buyer screen, buyer tab screen, main screen, buyer tab screen. So we want to move from one to the other, we pass the data. Okay, we need to be able to pass the data. We go to seller, pass the data to seller. We want to go to profile, pass the data to profile, so that you can see here that we can retrieve. We go to the profile tab here. So the profile tab here basically now consists of user information, which we retrieve from widget. So to see the data that we retrieve from widget, as we can see here, widget.user.email, so we'll be able to print out email, phone, be able to print out phone, and date rank, be able to print out date rank, right? And also name to string, be able to print out the name up here. So we can retrieve the user object through the use of widget keyword dot the object that we want to retrieve dot the variable that we want to retrieve. So that's basically how it works in this Mynelayan application. It can be very different with other type of application, but this is basically as simple as possible for you to learn about how to log in, how to work with the backend, how to process JSON data, and it works. The other one thing that I'm going to talk for this also is basically what we call as a um, preference. All right, so preference, what it does here is to remember me, to implement this remember me function here through the login screen. So what it does here is that when user click or unclick on this, it basically store user and password data into what we call as a preference data. So this data just a key value data that store in the application directory and can be retrieved by the application when it is needed. And usually we use this feature in email, in login, or if the application require to remember something. All right, to implement that, let's go back to the login screen. So from the login screen here, we have what we call as a preference widgets, a preference class that we added. And we need to install the shared preference first in the pubspec YAML. As we can see, the current version is 2.1.1. So once we import the shared preference, we need to stop and reinstall again because there's new preference or new library available, and then import the library into the intended class. And to be able to use that, so this is where when we click or unclick, so means that we need a method that to be able to do that. So that method to be able to store or delete preference basically implemented through this save remove preference. So the save remove preference method, what it does is that it basically check for the value of user when user click or unclick. Okay, when user click, this is false. When user click, this is true. So the value of bool here will depend on the value of user click. So what it does, basically retrieve the email and password from the text editing controller from the form, and then create a preference object. Okay, there's a preference object. So the preference object, and here we just to check if the form key state and actually just to check for the is checked or not. All right, but it's not important. The most important part is the if statement here. So if the value that we receive from the checkbox is true, means that we want to store the value. So if value is true, we store the preference value by using preference.setString. Okay, preference.setString, which basically get the email and password and checkbox information by using preference object, set string for string data, and set bool for boolean data. So this is what we call as a key value pair being saved into your application. Okay, use the preference, set string, this is the key, this is the data. Set string, key, data. Set string, key, data. So that's basically how we save data into preference. And down here, this is just to show the preference snack bar. But if the value is unclicked, means that we want to delete the preference. So it will delete the preference by emptying the preference value from each of the key here. Empty, empty, and also turn to false. And then we set state and update the UI. All right. So for example, if I remove this, it will automatically remove all the value and the preference no longer there. All right, so it's no longer that. So, but there's a one more method that we need to add here is that when user go back to login and go to login here, we need for the class to be able to load preference when the class is being called. So that's will require another class, another method that we have here. This is called load preference method. And this load preference method will basically create a preference object and then retrieve the preference object by using the get string, and get bool. But there's a special statement here, which is basically the if statement, right? So which is to check if there's a preference or not. So get the preference string email, and if there's no value from the get string, it will return nothing, empty string. The same with password. This is basically just to check, like for example, this is the first time the application run, the preference is not there yet, so it will automatically set the preference as empty. And it goes the same with password, it set the preference as empty. And also it's checked here also to check for the checkbox to be checked or not. And then we just use set state to update our screen. So where do we call the load preference? And the load preference usually being called in the init from the init state. As we can see here, this is our init state. So whenever the class is being initialized, is being created, it will call out this load preference and load the preference value. And at the moment, because we already removed the preference value, there's no preference value at all. But if we enter preference data, and then we can just click on the button here, we can see the preference stored. And if we go back and we try to log in again, as we can see here, the load preference will load the shared preference that being saved in the preference data, and then load into our text field login form. So that's basically simple explanation how shared preference can be implemented in an application. Very simple, shared preference. And then here we can do whatever that we want. For example, if we want to do what we call as auto login. So the auto login here, for example, if I refresh the code here, what I mean by auto login is that the auto login from the splash screen will check for the shared preference. If there's a username and email, there's an email and password from the shared preference, we want to log in and retrieve the data, all the user data from there, so that user don't have to remember their preference all the time. The implementation basically implement through the splash screen here. So as you can see, the splash screen now updated. But for the splash screen, we have to disable our timer. So the timer here will be implemented through check and login methods. So the check and login method will implement or will try to read the preference object through the preference, because preference basically available throughout the application, because it is a text file that live in the application directory. So if the is check is true, and then try to do this login. Try to log in by using HTTP post, and then try to create user object. Basically the same with login operation. And then implement a timer, and then push replacement and pass the user object to the main screen. But if the login is a fail, if there's no user login, if there's no user credential, we can create what we call a fake user object. We can create user object and pass the data to its constructor as an NA, just a string data, NA not available, and then pass the same object to the main screen, because main screen required user object. But here we pass a Fox user object or an empty user, or it's not available user object. If anything goes wrong, we create user object, and then we go to the main screen, pass an empty also user object. That's it. Uh, so once you have your user object here, it will automatically log in for you for the application itself with user credential. And thus we have our auto login features in the Mynelayan application. However, there's one more consideration of the application that I haven't yet implemented, which is offline mode. And it is required by the application, but we'll look into that later. All right. So that's basically how the login and registration and auto login with a shared preference implemented for my Nelayan application. And I hope that can be very useful for you to implement for your application. All right, so I think that's all for today's tutorial for the Mynelayan. And later on, we're going to look into how to create data um, from the buyer point of view. Therefore, because as a buyer, oh sorry, from the seller point of view, from seller point of view, user will require to be registered to be able to upload their catch using a form. But if they are not registered, they cannot do much. They cannot upload items. So we somehow force user, if they want to use the application as a seller, they have to register. So that's basically how the implementation of registration and login. I hope that's beneficial for you for your application. And thank you.